Okay, well, welcome everyone. We are happy that you have joined us today in our webinar. Today we're going to talk about saving water in the landscape and our mobile irrigation lab. So again, thank you. I have a couple of slides that kind of explains this format a little bit to help us through here. So first, we are going to record this webinar, and I put that slide in here to actually remind myself to hit the record button. So yes, we are recording. So we are recording this, but just so you know, your chat along with your question and answers will not show up in the recording. We hopefully can use this recording for other educational outreach in the future, but the questions that you ask, unless we verbally answer them or discuss them on the recording, will not appear on the recording, and neither will your chat. So feel free to use those features. Somewhere on your screen, you should see buttons that look like this. Up at the top in the red, you can see the Leave Meeting button. If you do need to leave, please just click on that button and that will pull you out of the meeting or the webinar. If you want to return, you can return back with the same link that you used to get here. So you're free to come in and out as you please. The other buttons I'm going to talk about in detail here. We may ask you at some point if you do something. How many of you like to save Florida water? You can raise your hand by hitting the little raise hand icon. So that's not to ask a question, that's just to participate in the how many of you. The chat button, that's for you to bring things up to us like, I can't hear you, there's something wrong, and I have some colleagues on the line here that I will be introducing that can help us in the background. So while I'm talking, if you have a problem, they'll try to help solve that. So if you'd like, go ahead and hit that chat button now, and you can change it to just the panelists see your chat. So you can change that if you'd like, and just chat a little hi in there. Okay. All right, and then there's the Q&A button up there. So the Q&A button is for questions and answers, and if you have a question, please feel free to type it in there. We can manage the questions much easier in that question and answer area because it won't move the question until we click that we've answered it. In the chat, sometimes a lot of chat gets happening and we'll miss a question in the chat. So if you have something that you want to ask us, please use the Q&A. We'll be happy to answer those questions. All right. And then lastly, we just ask that you limit distractions. We thank you in advance because we're all kind of learning some new technologies through this COVID pandemic. And so sometimes we have dogs barking or people coming to the door or there's a technology issue. So just thank you in advance for your patience. And remember to type in the chat if you have any issues and we'll try to help you out and adjust it on our end. All right, so let's talk about what we're here to talk about, and that is our water. Environmental concerns are, very prevalent here in Florida. Water quality is a big, big issue. We have a lot of impaired bodies of water, and some of that comes from misusing fertilizers and pesticides, but a lot of it actually comes from over-irrigating. When we over-irrigate our landscapes, it pushes all of that stuff, grass clippings, fertilizers, pesticides, it pushes it all out into natural bodies of water and causes some of that water quality problem that we have. So if we can reduce that over-irrigation, we can help better our water quality or prevent pollution from heading downstream. So you can see here that most all of our storm drains head to natural bodies of water or natural waterways. In Manatee County, we have a lot of stormwater ponds that collect our water before it moves on to a natural body of water. But some of our older developments pipe straight into the Gulf of Mexico if you're out on the island, or the Manatee River if you're along 64. So it's going to take any of that stormwater runoff right into these bodies of water, carrying all kinds of pollution with it. Florida is expected to grow, of course. We have a beautiful state with beautiful water resources, so everybody wants to live where they vacation. The problem with that is, more pollution, more chances for runoff because more homes, more concrete, more area that pollution can come in. You can see the map change there. This is what we're anticipated in the year 2060 to look like. The red is developed land. So you can see that we're really anticipating a lot of growth here, a lot more people coming in, a lot more irrigation systems and landscapes. So the statistic is about 60% of a homeowner's water use is used for their lawn and landscape, primarily for irrigation. And that's true of people that have those automatic irrigation systems that run, by the clock. The clock tells it to come on. The way that we design our landscapes can really be impactful on how much water we use. Looking at the plants that we're using, our overall designs, and then only watering as needed, only turning that water on when the plants tell us they need it, instead of every time the clock says it's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, right? So this is a typical looking newer home here in our area. So how much water do you think this typical home uses? You see a lot of turf, and you hear a lot of talk about turf uses so much water. But if you really look at the neighborhood and look at that particular home, so that particular home is highlighted in yellow here, their water use, and then you can see the rest of the community, nearby homes. That home actually used less water, and the reason is they were turning their irrigation system on and off as needed, instead of just relying on the timer to run the system 3 times a week. Or a rain shutoff device that we find very often is not functioning properly or located in the wrong area. So a lot of our systems, our irrigation systems, have these great rain shutoff devices, but if they're not functioning, they're not doing you any good. Or if they're not installed in the right place, they're not doing us any good. So again, here's a photo of that home again, and they still have green turf. Their plants are still growing, and they used far less water than their neighbors, just by controlling it by hand and using it as an as-needed basis. So efficiency is really one of the keys to helping reduce runoff, but yet keep your landscape healthy. So we want to be as efficient in our watering as we can. Here's that example I was talking about. If you take a large area of turf, it does require a lot more water than landscaped areas. And there's a comparison here in the two photos. You can see the amount of water that turf can use versus if we landscape an area, how much can be saved. Now, if you have pets, if you have children, if you have a purpose for your turf, then by all means, maintain turf. But a lot of times we're maintaining turf with really no purpose, and big areas of turf with no purpose. So why not look at alternative ground covers or landscape beds in those areas, and maybe reduce some water use. Irrigating in the morning and in the afternoons, we know this because our water restrictions also indicate this, before 10 a.m. and after 4 p.m. can help with evaporation. We lose a lot of water in the hot part of the day if that's when we're irrigating. Also, we lose a lot of water in windy conditions. When the wind's blowing real hard, if we have like those little mist emitters, it just blows the water right off the target, which would be our plants. Water as needed. The turf will tell you when it needs water. It'll start to fold up like the top picture. The blades will fold in half. We say it's praying for rain. It'll turn kind of a blue-green color. And instead of just automatically running that system all the time, maybe start to look for signs. Um, uh, the lower picture is showing the dormant season. Like zoysia is a turf that we use in this area that goes dormant in the winter. So it turns brown, it dies back, and it's just dormant. Watering it is not going to help it. Actually, it can create fungus. It can create problems during the dormant season to be watering it. So when it's spring, it starts to green back up, and that's when it can benefit from some water if we have some really dry times. But of course, during that rainy season, we need to look at if we need to have the system on at all. Now's really the time we're starting to get some rain finally, yay. We need to be checking that irrigation system, making sure it's in good repair. We've got our plants, growing. It's a growing season. We want to make sure our rain sensors, our shut-off devices are functioning properly so we can benefit from saving water, or just start, turning the system on and off as needed. Let your landscape tell you when it needs water. If we overwater, we create so many problems. We can get weeds to grow. The plants don't go deep for their water, so they have these very shallow root systems, and the plants aren't as strong. When we have a drought, they're the first to die. Overwatering creates fungus and bacteria environments, but it can also reduce the oxygen because you've essentially flooded the soil, so there's not any oxygen to get down to those root systems. Of course, we tell you to watch the weather. If it's too cool or if it's rainy, maybe you can shut that system off. There's the bottom photo is a cross section of a rain shutoff device. There's a couple of different things going on there. There's an immediate shutoff device, which some folks, some areas you get ticketed if it's raining and your irrigation system's on. But on a typical rain sensor, it may take a few minutes of rain before it triggers the system to shut off. So this particular model has an immediate shut off and then the longer term rain sensor that will prevent it from coming on if you've received adequate rain, and then the solar sensing device. But you can use the rain gauge pictured up at the top, the manual method, we call it. Just stick that rain gauge out there, and when we get rain, you'll see how much you've received, dump it, and wait for rain again. If you receive at least an inch a week or 3/4 of an inch a week, then you're good. All right, so to help you with all this, Manatee County generously funds a mobile irrigation lab, which is a free resource for you. Uh, Dawn and Valerie Massey are part of the team that comes out in the field to look at your landscape and help you conserve water in your landscape. Again, this is a free service. We'll have our contact information at the end of this presentation, so you are welcome to contact us to set up an appointment. But Dawn and Valerie will come out, run your irrigation system. They're looking for leaks, cracks, inefficiencies in the irrigation. Valerie also is looking at plants to see if there's signs of overwatering or underwatering or conditions from the irrigation going on in the landscape, because it's a marriage between the plants and the irrigation, and it has to be a good balance between the two for you to have a healthy landscape. So the two of them help look at your landscape and make recommendations to help you save water, having that healthy landscape. The county also provides a rebate. You do have to qualify One of those qualifications is being a Manatee County Utilities customer. But there are other qualifications for that rebate. But if you do qualify, they'll help you pay to retrofit, to replace, to put some water saving technologies in, including replacing or installing a rain sensor. The rebate has some caveats, and I don't want to take too much time on that because we don't have a lot of time with you today, but we're happy to answer questions about that if you have them. So the on-site evaluation includes running that irrigation system. You can see here the rotor is spraying right into the road. That would be something that we would note and say, you know, that concrete, that asphalt, it's not going to grow. It does not need water. You can see on the walkway to the front door there, there's an irrigation head up next to the wall that's irrigating rock and sidewalk. That's a total waste of water. The bottom photos are showing some results of not great irrigation. Leaf spot can be spread with overhead irrigation, and so you can see some leaf spot on that hedge there. Some of our take-all root rot can be caused or exacerbated with over irrigation. And that palm tree, you can see where the irrigation heads have just beat the trunk of that palm tree up. It's like a rotor continuing to spray on there multiple times a week, causing damage. So those would be the things that we would notate and give you recommendations to help improve the health of your landscape and reduce water. Here's a common thing that we would be recommending. On the left, you see some rather tall, those are about 4 foot tall spray heads. What happened is the plants grew over time. Those plants grew, and they grew the irrigation with the plants. Now the irrigation is up so tall that the wind is going to move it. It's probably not going to hit the target. It's overspraying other things. So that's really just not an efficient way to water those plants. Where the photo on the right is showing one form of micro irrigation, which is drip tubing, and that is putting the water right down into the soil. So even if it's a windy day, it's not going to affect that system. It's still going to go down into the soil, and it gets the water where it's needed to the plants, which is at the root system. So we often are recommending the low volume irrigation be installed instead of that higher volume, which are spray heads and rotors. Okay, so that was a really brief introduction into the mobile irrigation lab and how you can save a little bit of water, well, hopefully a lot of water in your landscape. What I'd like to do, I have the team on here with me, and I'd like for them just to come on individually and introduce themselves. And then I think we already have a couple of questions, and we'll start answering questions. So Valerie, why don't you turn your mic on and say hello? You're muted, Valerie. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Hi, I'm Valerie Massey, and I am the Horticulture Program Assistant with the Mobile Irrigation Lab. It's really a wonderful job to have to go out and interact with all the homeowners that we see in Manatee County, and very encouraged when we get very positive feedback from the homeowners. When they've had us come out, we're able to show them how they can improve. And with the reports that we send out after we've done the evaluation, they then send us feedback afterwards saying how much that, you know, they have made the changes, and we can see that they can see the improvement in their water bill, or reduction, I guess you'd say.
Great, thank you. Don, if you'd like to go ahead and turn on your mic and say hello.
Good afternoon. My name's Don Adkins. I am the program assistant for water conservation. My focus is actually the irrigation system, its maintenance, its repair, and how I can make recommendations to you, the homeowners of Manatee County, where you can save water and also money. I work with Valerie, and a big part of our program is the evaluation, but beyond that, we do very extensive reports that provide a lot of information. And just as now we are providing this webinar today, we also provide classes either conducted at the Extension Center or at off-site facilities where we welcome any and all residents to attend. It is a free service. And even now we're going to this level of providing it electronically. I'll be conducting a class on May 26th, Tuesday, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. With regards to designing your irrigation system. So giving a lot of information there on the best implementation of the various types of irrigation per what your landscape and your turf grass area needs are. Thank you.
All right, Don, thank you. And someone that you hardly ever see, but she's a tremendous amount of support for us, is Dina Brinker. And she is probably the first person that you talk to when you call to make an appointment with us. So Dina, if you want to click on and just say hello.
Hello, welcome everyone. I am Dina Brinker, the office specialist. I will be the one taking all the calls that come in with any questions that you may have regarding your reports or making an appointment. And if I can't answer the question, I'll definitely be able to direct you where we can get your questions answered for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dina. I'm gonna just, Dina, if you would unmute yourself for a second, and then there, thank you. Okay, it did that holdover thing. Okay, so we have a couple of questions here that I'm probably going to throw out to the team and see. So one question is, how much can irrigation be reduced without actually hurting your lawn? So who wants to take that question? Okay, I'll take it. So how much can irrigation be reduced without hurting your lawn? Well, you want your lawn to tell you when it needs to be irrigated. So it depends, let's say. If you've been over irrigating your lawn for years, the root system is very close to the surface and it will dry out very quickly, that root system, because that first, let me get in the screen here, that top layer of soil is the first to dry out. The deeper we can encourage root systems to go, the longer it can withstand drought. So we always want to treat our landscape like we're in a drought, watering very deeply when we water, but not very often. So less often, deeply, to encourage those root systems to grow down where there's more moisture. So you can slowly wean back your system or your turf from being so water needy by, slowly changing the way that you've been watering less often and more deeply, and just kind of wean it off as you do it. So how much can irrigation be reduced without hurting a lawn? I can tell you that I have Bahia grass, which is probably the least maintenance requiring turf that you can utilize here in the county, and I don't water it. I don't have an irrigation system. I have green grass in my front and backyard right now, but it's not that same look as St. Augustine, and I have good soil. So if you don't have good soil, sometimes you can't get away with that. And if you have St. Augustine, it does seem to require a little more water than Bahia. So it depends. That's a it depends question, but there's always typically room for improvement. If you've got an automatic system that's running 2 or more times a week, you can definitely improve and not hurt your lawn if you do it in a progressive way. Okay. Don, I'm going to direct this one to you. Can I use rotors or spray heads for irrigating turf and in my landscape beds? So can you use the rotors and the spray heads in both turf and landscape beds?
To answer that one, rotors and spray heads are designed for your turf grass areas. That's the areas that will require more volume of water, whereas in your landscape beds, it is extremely inefficient to utilize rotors or spray heads there. In the landscape beds, the landscape plants, they typically require less water than the turf grass does, plus their roots, unless they're blocked by a man-made object, if those plants have been installed for a while, their roots have moved out into the turf grass zone, and that's where all the plants take their water up from, is through the root system. To give you an ideal spray heads, one spray head typically with a 180-degree spray pattern can use anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 gallons per minute. Rotors, same rotor with a 180-degree spray pattern, anywhere from 3 gallons to 5 gallons per minute. So the turf grass requires much more water than the landscape does, plus the landscape is also, once it's established, is taking its water from the turf grass zones also.
Great, thank you. Valerie, we got a water quality question here. Can I use fertilizer containing nitrogen year-round? And the way that we're going to say that pertains to water conservation is if you over apply or apply the wrong type of fertilizer, it gets pushed out into our natural bodies of water when we're over irrigating. But the question is, can I use a fertilizer containing nitrogen year-round? Valerie, you're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
The answer is no. You cannot use a fertilizer containing nitrogen year-round. First off, there is a fertilizer ordinance that does not allow using any kind of fertilizer that has any nitrogen in it from June 1st through September 30th. And so and also when you say year-round fertilization, you want to make sure that you're not over fertilizing. There are certain times of the year that you should fertilize, but mainly the fertilizer ordinance is what this is referring to as June 1st through September 30th. There is no fertilization allowed with nitrogen in that. And that is due to the idea that with the rains and everything, it can wash off and into our waterways and into our ponds and lakes and create a problem with algae. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Dawn, actually, Dina can answer this question. And that is, do all residential homes qualify for a mobile irrigation lab evaluation of their irrigation and landscape?
The answer would be yes, they all would qualify for an evaluation. Anyone with an irrigation system will qualify for our free evaluation on your irrigation and your landscape.
Perfect. So if you're in Manatee County, take advantage of this program. It is free to you. Your tax dollars are funding it, or your utility dollars are funding it. Okay, along those same lines, Valerie, do all homes in Manatee County qualify for the irrigation and/or landscape rebate?
No. If you, there's several requirements that you must have in order to have a rebate, to be able to qualify and apply for a rebate. You must be a Manatee County resident. You must have a house that was built before March of 2003, and you must have a volume of greater than 8,500 gallons per month for a 6-month period of usage, greater than 8,500 gallons per month usage. And you must have a backflow device. So I believe those are the requirements that you apply for. The, we're saying, okay, pre-qualify, that it's likely that you are going to be able to, if you meet all of those requirements, that you will be able to apply. And then the utilities department, they go through and they double check everything. And first thing, the first requirement is that we come out and do an evaluation. Then it's then determined for sure that you do qualify, and then you put, we send out our reports. Then you can go ahead and make the changes. And I know I'm going a little bit further than in the answer than that, but yes, those are the requirements. So not everybody in Manatee County qualifies if you have a in-ground system. You have to have a house before 2003 when it was built, and the other qualifications. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this one's for Don. Is it a requirement that you have to have a rain sensor or a rain shutoff device on your irrigation system?
The short answer to that is yes. In July 2009, the Florida legislature created a statute requiring that all homes with an operational in-ground irrigation system have some manner of moisture interrupt switch, be a rain sensor, a soil moisture sensor, or a evapotranspiration system. The statute is 373.62, and that, like I said, it is a requirement that you not only have one, but it is operational. And if you would like, we on our IFAS site, we just completed a short video on the proper placement and ways of testing your rain sensor to make sure it is operational. And because it's a mechanical device that built by man, it needs to be checked periodically.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, if you go to our Facebook site for UF IFAS Manatee County Extension, you can see a short 1.5-minute video on the proper location and how to test that the rain sensor. There are other devices that you can use for rain shutoff devices, but so find your way there. Let's see, I'm looking here real quick to see if we got all of our questions answered. It seemed like there was another one. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Why should we care about water conservation? Isn't there enough water? And Don, is that something you're wanting to answer? Okay, you go right ahead if you'll unmute.
Seeing as I'm going through this course that I'm taking now as a water conservation manager, all the water on earth that we have right now is all the water that there ever was and ever will be. Potable water is a non-renewable resource, meaning once the potable water, which is our drinking water, is gone, shortly thereafter, everything else is. Water is life to everything, and especially to us. There's only, we're dependent on rainfall for water, but it's just being recycled. In Manatee County, the water sources for potable water is from the Lake Manatee Reservoir and from the Floridan Aquifer. They pull it, mix it at a 2-to-1 ratio. For every 2 gallons that they take out of the reservoir, they add a gallon from the aquifer. But potable water is a non-renewable resource, and of all the water on Earth, only 1% of it is potable. So that's a very small amount considering all the water on Earth. You're muted, Michelle.
Sorry, I said good answer. There's one more question I thought I saw. Oh, here it is. And Don, well, actually, Valerie, this is a good one for you. Won't lawns and landscape plants suffer if they are not irrigated every day in the summer? So there you go.
Yes. Okay. Actually, if our weather is kind of a typical Florida rainy season, they will suffer more if they're getting irrigated every month or every day during the rainy season. So if you're getting at least 3/4 to an inch of rain every week, you do not have to have, you don't need to have your system on. And it's best to, if you don't have a working rain sensor, just turn your system off. But keep track of what amount of rain that you're getting, and then you can always turn it back on if need be. But generally our rainy season starts sometime in June. Sometimes last year it even started in middle of May. So it will suffer if you irrigate in addition to the rain.
So Valerie, while you're still there, we have a question for you, and that is, what is the best type of mulch for plant beds? And we know mulch is good because it retains water, which helps save water. It doesn't dry out as fast where the water is needed to those root systems. But this question is, what is the best type of mulch for plant beds?
Generally an organic mulch or a wood mulch that is going to, as it slowly decays, it will add organic matter back into your soil, which will help the soil be healthier. And if your soil is compact, it'll help it to become more permeable and allow more oxygen to the root system. Over time, it'll help with drainage. Pine straw needles are great in that they lock together and stay in place better. They also are a little bit acid, so if you have a higher pH in your soil, it can help to bring your pH down to more neutral or slightly acidic, which most plants like. But there are other, types of pine straw, pine bark. There's shredded. There's melaleuca, which is, they call it flora mulch. That's actually from the melaleuca tree, which is an invasive species, and what they've come up with is a way to take that and turn it to a good purpose by making it into a mulch. So that's what I would say. Rocks are not considered, rocks and or rubber mulch are not considered very optimum, just because they don't retain the moisture in the root zone, and they don't moderate the temperature. So sometimes it's good. I mean, it's fine to have rocks up against and around the perimeter of your house to help with drainage, and that's a positive, about 1.5 feet out at least minimum, maybe even more. But you really don't, it's not positive to have them underneath your plants and around your plants, because they do heat up more and they don't benefit the plant root zone. Thank you.
Okay, Don, I think I have another one for you. When restricting my watering to odd or even days instead of every 3 days, would that encourage us to overwater?
No, depending on the time of year, you can actually cut it back to once per week. The way the restrictions that are set up now, and all of the restrictions are handed down from the state. In the state of Florida, the state owns all the water. So They are responsible for managing it, and so they hand down the restrictions. Currently, the water restrictions are twice per week. If your home ends in an odd number, the address, your days are Wednesdays and Saturdays. If it's an even number, is Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays, excuse me. But during the time of year, such as from June through October, you can really cut back to once per week. That's typically summer. As you're starting to see, we're getting into some rainy seasons. So to reiterate on what Michelle was saying earlier, you really only need to water as needed. Most of the controllers, you can only set it up for days and not super custom, but you can set it up for once per week or every 10 to 14 days, depending on how much rainfall we get. And that's the reason why the rain sensor is so important. It takes that guesswork away from you. April and May are typically our dry months, so you would want to water twice per week then. And then the winter months, January, February, March, November, part of October, November, and December. While in this part of Florida, none of the plants truly go dormant, they do slow down their modes of action. They slow down in growth. So they don't need to produce as much chlorophyll, which is their food source. So with not needing as much chlorophyll, they don't need as much water. So watch your lawn, watch your landscape, irrigate as needed, but the basic rule, and that's a calendar we can provide with recommendations as to, depending on what time of year, as to how much you need to water.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Valerie, we have one other question. I think we have time for just one last question. And that is, how can we measure the pH level of our soil, and will it vary in different parts of the lawn?
Okay. I believe, yes, that it can vary. Your pH can vary in different parts of the lawn. It can vary if it's necessarily next to the concrete walkway. Let's say there's a place in your yard where maybe the developer had some leftover concrete debris that they figured, okay, I need to put this somewhere and I don't want to haul it away. And so they might just bury it in your pad, because you want a good strong pad to put your house on, but maybe it's out in the yard where it got buried. So that will affect, that concrete debris can affect your pH. And the way to check your pH is you can take a soil sample down at least 6 to 8 inches that you dig out in a particular location, and it might be a good idea to, if you want to check your backyard, do a plastic Ziploc bag with at least a pint, I believe is the amount that they say, and label that. And then if you want something in your front yard or side yard, do another sample for that. And then you can bring them to the extension office and they do testing there for your pH. It's a very minimal fee, I think of around $4 or $5 per sample to test for the pH in your soil. And that is very important to know when you're starting to, if you're having problems with your plants, it's one thing that you can check depending on how you're watering, if you're not overwatering, or if you don't think you're overwatering. pH is a really good thing to know, so that if you're going to be putting in new plants, you want to make sure that the plants that you're selecting are the right plant for where you're going to be locating it, so that the pH is correct. That's one thing.
So if you have a problem, then you would pull the sample from that problem area. But if you're looking like at a new site and you want to know what the pH is, let's say in the front yard, you would pull from several different locations, because we have these fill soils when we develop, and there could be maybe just a weird little pocket of something. And if that's the only place you pull from, it may give you a misreading for the whole site.
Right.
So yeah, but if you have a problem in a certain area, you just can't get grass to grow in this 10-foot circle, then you would pull right from that area to diagnose that. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, good job, guys. Thank you for joining me, and thank you, audience, for joining us and all the great questions that you asked. We appreciate spending some time with you. And our contact information is up. Hopefully you've had a chance to copy it down, and you'll contact us with any future questions or to set an appointment for us to come visit you. So thank you, and have a great day.